Hello, I'm Sharon Wilson. I'm publisher of Resort Trades Magazine. Welcome. Last week, we had, for our Trades Lunch Bunch guest, we had Jimmy Dance from Travel Resorts of America telling us about the private RV, private campground membership program that Travel Resorts of America uses. And also, he mentioned they are looking for talent. So if you missed it, take a moment, go into YouTube to Resort Trades, look that up. And while you're there, please subscribe to our channel and hit the little bell icon. So you'll always be up with your community and you can partake and be an influencer too. So today we have IT consultant Suzzi Morrison. She's a former CTO with Nordis and a renowned vacation ownership systems expert. And I remember when I worked at Concord Servicing Corporation, we had an enormous, I'm sure they still do, enormous IT department, and they were in awe of Suzzi. So she obviously knows her stuff. She's operating her own consultancy through S3A Inc. And we'll have information on how to contact her after this. And also you can download her slide presentation. But first, let's start out with a poll question asking, what is your area of expertise? Is it IT, sales and marketing, management and operations, or other? So while people are getting acclimated to that, perhaps we will go ahead and let Suzzi get started. Hi and welcome.
Hey, Sharon, thank you much for that fabulous introduction. I feel super. And thanks for the opportunity to connect with everyone. It's actually nice to feel sort of engaged with our community again. I'm looking at the poll results so far, and this is funny, bringing technology home. There are no IT people in our session today. It's all sales and marketing, operations, and then some other over there so far. So let's go ahead and get started. We have the session's called Bringing Technology Home, Benefits, Balance, and the Bottom Line. And I want to start from the beginning where we're talking about what I call the IT Scramble. So at the beginning of our lovely pandemic, we had what I refer to as the IT Scramble, where all of a sudden offices had to shut down and everybody essential had to work from home. So all of a sudden, your technology team had to make sure there were secure devices for everyone to take home. They had to figure out, okay, do we have time to order and configure laptops? Should we just have people take their desktops home and figure out how to plug them in? Do we have enough VPN licenses to ensure that people who are working from home can securely connect to our network? You know, the one thing you always have to be careful when someone is doing work with you is their home security good, and if they're going to connect to your actual business network, make sure that they're connecting with an extremely secure connection. And that's what a virtual private network license would provide, or help provide anyway. You had to, the IT group had to go, how are we going to make sure we can support everybody remotely? We can't just walk in and have a look at Suzzi's computer. We have to be able to connect to it while she's sitting in another city or state, potentially. We need to make sure that her equipment is going to remain up to date and automatically updated, as well as antivirus has to keep running. And then the magic question that I don't know that anyone ever found the great answer for is, what do we do about printing? I personally rarely print things, but I know people who print everything. and when they're at work. And when you're at work and you're used to printing out a piece of paper and scribbling on it, writing on it, then now all of a sudden you've got work documents and you don't have your printer and you're not allowed to add a printer to the machine that you're working on, it's a little sticky. Some companies maintained, okay, if you actually have to print stuff, come in once a week, schedule the time, or however often you need to schedule it, go to your office and print, and then take your printouts home with you. If you have a home printer, they may let your IT department set up that printer on your machine so that you can use your own printer if you really needed to print. But that's a little tricky question. I'm not sure there was ever a great solution to, other than sending a printer home with a person. Phones were a similar thing. A lot of companies, fortunately, were on IP phones, which means potentially you could have someone take that phone and plug it into the computer that you send home with them, and their phone and their phone would act just like it was at the office and wouldn't know any difference once they connected to the network. It's not always the case. A lot of times they forwarded office phones to cell phones, but there was always a scramble to figure out what do we do with communication in general. And then how do we know that when someone goes home, their home network is secure? What are we going to do to help with that? IT had to become experts on a variety of internet service providers, a variety of home routers and devices in order to make sure everybody that was working and they weren't bringing anything into the network and the systems that shouldn't be there. And then the most fun one was, as we know, and we're doing it today, is how do we have secure meetings? How everybody, Zoom was a favorite, GoToMeeting another favorite. A lot of people who use Office 365 chose Teams to have secure meetings. Those are all great solutions. I think one of the key things with them is that training had to happen. So some of us use them all the time. We don't, we could do it in our sleep. And other people who weren't used to virtual meetings, they would have in-person meetings, had no idea how to create or host, set up, invite a Zoom meeting, or even the camera on their technology. Your computer camera, does that work? How does my audio work? Where does it come from? How do I fix the volume? I'm getting an echo. So a lot of training was also required or ongoing, and probably will be ongoing from a meetings hosting perspective. So once we got through the scramble, we said, okay, there's some things we've got to consider now that we're separating our office, and a lot more people are remote, and maybe they will, maybe they won't come back into the office. So we get past the scramble and we go, okay, let's think about some longer term, bigger picture things. We should probably restructure our password policy to move on to passphrases. And a passphrase is a sentence as opposed to a word that you would remember, such as, the example that I think was in the article was, I have a dog named Barney, and Barney loves to swim. In my case, Barney doesn't love to swim. He won't even get in the water. But let's say that I wanted to use that as my passphrase. I would say Barney loves to swim is my passphrase. And I would, instead of the word to, I would use the number 2. And I would probably substitute another character with an @ sign or a hashtag or a % sign, some other special character, change one of the letters to that, so that I've got a very complex number, character, uppercase, lowercase, and a sentence, making it really difficult and a complex structure for someone to break in. The other thing is require your passwords, which I hate personally, but it's a really good security option. Require people to change them more frequently. We get into the habit of changing them, once every 6 months or once a year personally and we go into work and we groan when it's every 3 months. Maybe it should be less than that, depending on what system someone has access to. The higher the risk of that data being lost or out, the more frequently you should probably change your passwords or require password changes. whenever possible, require dual authentication. That means I have to get my magic code on my cell phone if I want to log in to, and I've set it up on a lot of sites as well. It's getting very, very common that even though I put in the right username and the right password, then I'm still going to get a code to put in so that to my cell phone, so that it is a dual authentication method, not just the login and password, but another form going to a separate device. And then the key with all of this is to monitor. As we put all these things in place, if no one's watching, you can still have issues. So monitoring who's logging in, who's doing what, how they're doing it is critical. And finally, you know, we have costs for all of these things. What I found over the course of the past 6 months is that all vendors will negotiate. You'd rather have business at a smaller sum than no business at all. And so I, as an example, I switched internet service types and actually got better performance for 1/3 of what I was, actually 1/4 of what I was paying. Just by saying, hey, I'm either going to go somewhere else or I need you to upgrade to this type of service. And I can take a couple things off over here, but I need this additional layer of security. And it was actually Spectrum. They were happy to sort it out for me, which is completely different than how it was maybe 9 months ago or a year ago. And then just an extra note on the security policy things. This has come up very recently in some conversations with some of my colleagues locally. As people are coming back to work, so things are opening back up and you're bringing your people back into the world of the office or even into systems, so you're unfurloughing people and even bringing that part-time or whatever. Anybody that you had put on furlough in April or May, they've been out of their systems for more than 3 or 6 months. They're probably locked out. Their passwords have expired. Their accounts are frozen. They're not going to be able to come back to work on Monday and pick it right back up from where they left off. So you need to really coordinate ahead with your IT group that they reset all of those things and they get that kicked off before you have somebody coming back into the office or even coming back to work from home if they've been furloughed, because they're going to try to log in and then they're going to be on the phone with your IT group waiting in a line of however many other people, possibly hundreds, that you might have brought back on the same day or same week, trying to get everything set back up. I personally know someone who it took 3 days to get their phones reset so that they could actually collect all their voicemails. So those are things to consider on both sides of that. Planning with IT so that there's no more scramble is critical to success. So now the dust has settled, we can have a look at some of the benefits of a remote workforce. And I know I've worked with a lot of different people. Some people are totally engaged and in support of remote workforce. Some people are like, no way, I need to have my people in my building. I need to be able to stop in and talk to them. I need to have one-on-ones in person. I need that physical contact. But of course, the pandemic proved, okay, you can't always do that. So now we've gotten more used to or more accepting of a remote workforce. And that some of the good stuff that's come out of that is if you're thinking, oh, you know, we're going to add 30 people this year, I don't have space for 30 people to sit. Well, guess what? You can probably come up with a way that some key people can always work remotely. Some people can be in the office, or any blend of sharing office space, part-time, full-time. So you'll find some good savings by not having to physically expand real estate for office growth. You can look outside your local area for resources, which is probably one of the hugest benefits. If you have a position which you've determined now can actually be remote, you can look across the United States. You don't have to pay to relocate anybody. You don't have to worry about, I only have, 6 of these in Orlando, Florida to pick from. You can say, well, it's a remote job, so you can live in Podunk, Montana, for as long as you can connect and we can communicate and you're working on our time zone, it's all good. Some articles have said productivity is greatly improved with less interruptions, less what I call water cooler talk, less the chitter chatter of, hey, how was your weekend? What are you doing tomorrow? You want to go to dinner tonight? What, all of those things. How's your husband? Not that those are bad things. You can just have numerous interruptions and a lot of slowing down with the socialization during the office hours. And then one of the key ones was stress from commuting. And I know whenever I have to commute somewhere, I'm a very frustrated driver. So by the time I get into an office, I kind of have to decompress for a little bit to get back to normal level after fighting traffic and such if I have a big commute. And apparently productivity is greatly improved if someone just has to walk upstairs to their office, come in, sit down with their cup of coffee and not have to spend 45 minutes getting to an office in traffic or avoiding things. And this was a surprising thing. I heard from several of my local colleagues that I said, are you having any issues with people running their antivirus, making sure that they keep their systems up to date? All their security is maintained. And they're like, no, surprisingly, it's the opposite. People are 100% paying attention and keeping their everything up to date way more than when they were in the office. And the belief is, I don't know that there's a true answer, that this is simply because people are concerned with putting a work device on their personal network. Aside from not wanting to cause problems at the office, they also don't want to cause problems at home. So they're paying a lot more attention to make sure everything stays up to date. And then there's a couple other articles that say morale's been identified with a flexible work plan. Like people are much happier when they can go in for 2 days and work from home for 3 days. So they get a little of the social interaction and a lot of focused time. It actually, it seems to work better than the gruel or the grind in some people's eyes, not everybody, of, okay, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, or whatever that might be. I got to switch over here to see if there's any questions too. So there's an article on a website, it's called review42.com, which they just published, that shows businesses would save an average of $11,000 annually by letting someone telecommute half-time. So half-time in the office, half-time at home, working remotely. Think about that exponentially, the savings that your organization can have. If you could, just by not needing the real estate, needing the electricity, coffee, whatever, all the little things that add up by having to have an office space and provide all of that surrounding infrastructure for that office space. There's some other good points to technology and convenience, thinking about it not just from the employee perspective, but more tools are coming out for your customers. So you can have, electronic signatures. Everybody's used DocuSign, but we're taking that further now. We've got, the online notaries where you don't actually have to go to the bank and get something notarized. You've got a lot of virtual reality tools out there. And I think there's a couple different players in our industry that are using virtual reality for things like redesigning rooms. So they're going to go in, they're going to create it virtually, and then you're going to put your virtual reality goggles on and you're going to tour that space as if you were walking through it, but you're only walking through it virtually. So you save the expense of actually redesigning or re-engineering, remodeling a new unit, a new timeshare room. Okay. So then you've got to come up with the right mix for your workforce. And there are some things in the balance to consider. If you're looking outside of your area, and I think this has been, and it happens a lot because people do have people working in other states, just make sure that you're able to abide by and prepared to work with the tax laws for whatever other state that you're going to, and that whatever insurance or plan that you offer, benefits plan, is going to work in that state and be supportable. And working remotely and office sharing, you may find, okay, by combining these things, these people are more efficient and more effective. I can reduce some headcount. Most likely, your IT group will probably take some of that back because supporting remotely is a little trickier sometimes, and you have to have a little more, some more skill sets or knowledge. As I said, you got different internet service providers, different routers, different this. So you're going to probably grow it in your IT group, maybe not exponentially or maybe not the same, but just keep that in mind. There'll also be a lot more training required from your technology team or any of your teams, wherever your training department lives. I know some of them live in HR, some of them live in IT, some of them live within the business units themselves. But I think training is going to be a little bigger because you're not going to have the big classes in-house that someone can, so you're going to have to do them remotely, online, or even potentially one-on-one. When new things come out, you're going to have to make sure you're strategic in that training process. And then not everything can be done remotely, and not everybody is cut out for remote work. So I have a few people that I know personally that are 100% can't work from home. They're like, every time I sit down, I think about, oh, I should throw in that laundry, or, oh, there's a dish on the counter, or I need some more coffee. And they find it difficult to stay focused when they're on their own and not in their work environment. So they might be somebody that would be a good mix. So they go into the office 3 days, they work from home 2 days, or the other way around. And then, as I said, not everything can be done remotely. If you're working at the front desk at a resort, that can't be done remotely. If you're, some development or construction type things, you might, if you're picking out the curtains for a unit, you probably have to see them and feel them and touch them. So there's a tactile involvement to that, not just looking at it on a camera. Those type of positions may require more in the office than out of the office, and less remote possibilities. There are tools that you can add for people that need that social interaction, like they're in the office. There's some gamification, Zoom happy hours. My sister with her team, they at lunchtime, they all get on I think it's a Zoom or FaceTime, I'm not sure what tool they're using. There's 6 or 8 of them, and they take their sort of lunchtime conversation / walk together, and they'll walk around the block together like they're together, but they're just virtually together. That helps them feel more socially interactive and engaged. And then that brings up the other tricky part of this, and I don't know, and maybe if anybody out there has a good answer, they can throw it up in the chat board. So employees are using personal devices like cell phones and home internet connections. Should you be paying a portion of those expenses for them since they're using their own devices? I don't know that there's a good answer. I would have my cell phone and I would have my internet connection no matter what, but not everybody would have to go to the same lengths or have the same plans if they're working from home. So maybe there is some sort of trade. Again, I don't know that there's a good answer. I know that the questions come up in a lot of different contexts, not even just the work from home context. I think my friend Angela Ward raised it as far as texting remote employees schedules or assignments to their personal cell phones, which is the best way to reach them, but they were their personal cell phones. So I'd love thoughts. If anybody has any suggestions or thoughts on that topic, that would be great. So if we look at the trends, obviously over the last 12 years, there's been a huge growth in remote work, flexible jobs, flexible hours, flexible days of the week. And I'm throwing that flex jobs in because as people work remotely, we're figuring out that you just want them to get the job done. And if they want to start at 6 in the morning and attend any necessary meetings or calls and stay on top of things, but they're going to take a break at 10 and come back at 1 and they'll work till 5 or whatever it is. If they're happy to start at 6, then it doesn't matter if they start at 6. If they're getting the job done and above and beyond, then awesome. So in addition to the remote work, you could add the flexibility that can lead for hours and time zones. So it's grown 159% in the last 12 years. That's a big time frame. 91% in the last 10, and in the last 5, and this is for up to 2019. Wow, it's 44%. I would assume that if you took 2020 into effect before we throw it out the window, it's probably another 100%. And I think that we've learned over the course of this year that we can successfully work from home. We can have our key essential employees, give them the equipment, give them the facility, and turn them loose, and they will and can do it. And we don't have to worry about people just taking a paycheck and not doing anything. I don't think that's real anymore. I think people can work as we need them to work. So I picture this trend. I would say, and this is just me with a crystal ball, this is a total guess, that at least 50% of the jobs that have been able to work from home successfully will stay remote work. I would predict that offices are now going to look at what departments would be easy to facilitate remote work for, and what departments have to be in the building, and what needs to be a mix, and come up with that blend. And finally, when we're coming to the conclusion of things and we're saying, okay, now we've got flexible work, we've got remote work, we've got to consider some things from an office space perspective. If you have people sharing an office, you're most likely going to need to redesign that or engineer it so that they have private space. One person on the right, one person on the left. Maybe they're sharing the monitor in the middle, whatever it might be. But you're going to want to always make sure that they feel like they have their own workspace, even if they're using it 3 days a week and somebody else is using that same space 2 days a week. If you're redesigning from a cubicle, I guess cubicle is the right word, the lower walled ones that we'd seen in like a lot of call centers or what have you, where everybody has their headsets on. I think we're going to need to rethink that a little bit. And, obviously you don't want to build coffins for everybody to sit in, so they feel like they're trapped in their little tiny 4 walls or their phone booth. But I've seen a couple of really good designs that were sort of the plexiglass surround, so that people would be able to see, but they would still have the privacy of the glass, but they wouldn't feel all boxed in, sort of in a little tiny space. And then the other thing is workstations really should be now, and this is more from the pandemic COVID perspective. You're going to need to fully divide them so that people feel safe and secure, and knowing that they're in a secure space where they don't have to worry about, Suzzi sneezing on their pencils. So that's another reason to have a look at something like the plexiglass or what have you, that still gives you that open space feeling, but protects you with that plexiglass. I've seen some really cool designs of this too, where they've changed the cubicles to not be really cubicles anymore. And they're more open and spaced, but they have the plexiglass between them. And I'm talking with my hands because I'm Italian. Okay. So the bottom line on this particular thought is that with a little creative thought and some planning, bringing technology home could give you a more flexible work plan and be a major benefit for both businesses and employees. Everybody should get bang for their buck and be a lot happier and a lot more productive if you can come up with a good mix for your organization. And I think, other than if you have any, if you want any additional information or you want to have any additional conversations, this is my contact information. If you don't already have it, please feel free to reach out to me and give me a shout. And now I think we're going to hand it back to Sharon and open the floor for questions.
Thank you, Suzzi. This was great. Great information. I took a bunch of notes because, like, password phrases. My dog is looking at the pool like she wants to swim, so maybe I'll try that. But at any rate, I wanted to remind everybody that Wendy Poe wrote a lovely article. It's in the November issue of Resort Trades. It's called, oddly enough, Bringing Technology Home. And it's all about the things that Suzzi said, and obviously amplifies it on it even more. So, and that's also posted on our website, resorttrades.com, 2 T's. And right now we have a couple of questions. So one, we had one from Bob. He says, Bob Kobeck. He says, and I think he's kind of showing off here, but he says, what are the top 3 differences between PII, PCI, and HIPAA security protocols?
Hey, Bob, from a technical perspective, all that data should be treated the same. You're gonna want to, PCI is a little trickier because PCI, of course, requires a different level of encryption. However, if it's my business, PII being personally identifiable information for anybody who doesn't know the buzzword, meaning name, address, phone number, account number, customer number, anything that can connect me together, 3 pieces of data that can connect me to me. And then you could potentially break into my account and learn more information and steal my identity and all sorts of bad things. PCI being personal credit information, which is credit card data. So my Visa, Amex, whatever account number and information related to that, or any charges or credits or what have you. And PCI has its own level of required encryption and security. But again, if you're me, I'm treating them all the same. HIPAA is, it's the Health Information Protection Act. I don't know, probably saying it wrong. It's your healthcare information that, again, has its own lockdown on what can or can't be shared, what does or doesn't need to be encrypted or transferred securely or what have you. I would treat them all at the same level of, pardon me, encryption and otherwise. They are data that is very costly if it's ever lost. You could have major issues and major expense and problems if any of that data is ever not secured. Let's see, I see Alessa Beta out there.
Yes, and last week, I apologize, as long as I've known you in the industry, you've been around 30 years, as have I, but that's our secret. I should know how to pronounce your last name. But Les does ask, let me scroll down there. Does review42.com address any reduction or increase in production?
I don't recall seeing any reduction or increase in production other than the general comment that they felt productivity was greatly increased. And their comment was more along the lines of less interruptions and definitely less stress from commuting. And I read that in several different articles. I just didn't bother to list them all, that because they were all sort of general comments. There was no actual number. Although unless you're out in California, so I got to believe that if you didn't have to commute, you'd be a lot less stressed.
Absolutely. Having lived in LA myself.
I moved in a nicer San Diego area, or Carlsbad, I can't remember now.
Well, at any rate, I don't know if there are other questions. I think that's all. I think that's all I see. Otherwise, if you do have any, you can certainly contact Suzzi directly. Her information's available there in the chat frame. Oh, also, someone is saying, what skills and characteristics do you look for when building an IT organization?
When building an IT organization, oh, that's interesting. It depends on the position that you're after. So when you take a position like a business analyst for gathering requirements for development, that needs to be someone who's logical, analytical, but who also has strong communication skills, both verbal and written, because they're going to need to work with a person to figure out what do we need to build for this department, for this function, for this job. So they're going to have conversations, draft things, writing, and then they're going to need to create basically the whole document. So you're going to need both strong verbal and written skills. If you take a position like sysadmin, that's really a unique skill. You're going to need some communication skills. They're going to need to be able to communicate with you if they need tools or time or there's a problem, but it's less, they'll have less interaction with the business units and more interaction with technology and other technical resources. So it really kind of depends on which position you're looking for. I think the key thing when you're building an IT group is to look for team members that will work well together and that they all culturally fit in with your organization's culture. And I don't mean that as in where you're from. I mean that as in this is a young hip company, or this is a wear a suit and a tie bank organization, or somewhere in the middle. And not saying you have to be young to be hip, because I'm old and I think I'm hip, but but there's a culture that goes along, and whatever resources you're bringing in, technology needs to fit that same culture. That would be the best advice.
Well, very good. Both of these questions, that one and the one following, were asked during registration. Okay. So I'm sorry I missed them earlier. But the second one was, are outsourced help desks as effective as supporting IT internally?
My personal opinion is no. That there are some roles, definitely some roles that can be outsourced. Sys administration could potentially be outsourced, but I personally think help desk should not be outsourced. And that's just because when I call a help desk, I want them to actually know who I am and what I do, at least within the company. They may have to reach out to another resource if they can't figure out at a high level a solution to my problem, my password's locked or what have you. They should be able to handle the basics, and more complex ones may need to go somewhere else. But the basic stuff should be internal. It's just a personal opinion, having worked and dealt with external help desk. Generally speaking, external help desks are, you use IBM and they have a help desk for you that you say, hey, I need to add these new users, or these guys quit, or whatever they are. They don't have the turnaround that you would want, I believe, either. Usually it takes 2 or 3 days to do something that if you had somebody on board yourself, it would take 2 or 3 hours. So, but again, that's just a personal opinion from experience. You might have people say the complete opposite, that outsourced help desks are more effective. I don't know.
All right. Well, good answer. All right. Well, this brings us to the end of our presentation. If there aren't any other questions, I sure appreciate those who did ask. Be sure to register for our next session. We'll be with Joe Naiman. He is going to talk about resales. So Joe Naiman, if most people in the industry, I guess, know him, is headquartered in Hilton Head, runs a large management company there, RMC Management, as well as a number of other companies, Epic Vacations, Resort Source, and Hilton Head Accommodations. So go to resorttrades.com/learning center, find Joe's registration and sign up. Also, if you don't forget, YouTube will have Suzzi's presentation posted here not very long from now, certainly I would imagine by the end of the day. So I thank you very much again. Next Friday, Joe Naiman. And if you're viewing this on YouTube, incidentally, please be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. We are eager to have our community knit together because, as you know, there was no Art World this year. One still wonders how much communication and networking and how much we'll be able to hear educational episodes like this in the future. So please sign up to listen to everyone and put your 2 cents in and become an influencer. So Suzzi, thank you again.
Hey, Sharon, thank you. Thank you and everyone, at Resort Trades for the opportunity to connect up with everybody. It's really nice to sort of feel connected in our world again.
I know.
And thank you again for the opportunity. It's been great. Oh,
you're very welcome. Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Stay in touch.
Bye.
Bye-bye.